Hey guys, welcome back to the WODdoc Project 365, episode 341. Today what we're talking about is taking those pieces of the puzzle that we found over the last several weeks, finally placing them together, completing our roadmap, so to speak, of our body, looking and seeing if maybe we have a whole bunch of asymmetries or dominance patterns, and that could possibly be contributing to susceptibility to injury. And if not, because nobody says that they have to cause injury, but at very least, what they are doing is making us less proficient. So if we can correct some of these asymmetries, some of these dominance patterns, we can make ourselves more proficient. You know what we say is optimizing function to optimize performance. To optimize that function, we need to optimize our symmetries, okay? Now, when we look at these things, I just want to point a couple things out, because what I tried to do is create a little flowchart for you that will hopefully streamline this. This is the way I want you to look at it for yourselves, and just as an overview or a roadmap, so to speak. Hopefully this works. I want you to look at a couple things here. We have shoulders, torsos, hips, and functionals. I'll talk about those in a second. But you're also going to notice that we have little numbers in parentheses: 320, 321, 22, over here, 39, 40. These are the episodes that this corresponds with, and I showed you how to test in those episodes. I don't have time to talk about each individual episode, so refer back to those. Find your percentages that we might speak of or that we might talk about, and fill these in correspondingly. Here, let's just get into it. So what we have first is we talked about pressing strength of the shoulder, okay? Just pressing. We looked at it in two different planes of motion. I'm going to talk about not necessarily percentages, but the dominance patterns that I tend to see, okay? When we look at upwards versus downwards, people can generally press more downwards. We can find that people generally can dip more than they can strict press, okay? When we move downwards and we looked at pressing versus pulling strength specifically, we find an interesting pattern here, okay? When we look at it horizontally, there's no doubt that the vast majority of people can press more, okay? What we see is we see them being able to bench press more. We see them, in the case that we tested it, do a whole bunch more push-ups than they can ring rows, okay? This is probably one of the largest ones that I see that needs to be addressed. However, when we move over to the vertical plane, it's the exact opposite. People generally could do more pull-ups than they can strict overhead press. Okay, they're not strict overhead press, but handstand push-ups. That tends to be the exact opposite. So we look at these two things. We see vertical. We see the different planes. Vertical being a pulling dominance, horizontal being a pressing dominance. However, what we can do is we can put these puzzle pieces together to help help correlate with our training, hopefully help neutralize these. As we went over, as we go over here, we're going to find the torso. Now, we tested the torso in two different ways. We looked at it laterally, or we looked at lateral faults, and we looked at rotational faults. When it comes to these type of things, I don't necessarily find any dominance patterns, because it's going to have a lot to do with whether somebody's right-handed or left-handed. However, here's what I get concerned about. I put these together specifically, torso and hips, because here's what it is. Let's just say left-handed. Let's just say I'm left-handed because I am left-handed. Let's say that I have a dominance pattern in my left, and it's pretty significant for lateral stability. And I also have a dominance pattern in my rotational. And I also have a dominance pattern down my hips when I talked about that split squat that we did, that Bulgarian split squat. This trifecta, this is what gets me a little bit nervous, okay? Because when I see everything dominated by the left, and it would work the same way if it was dominated by the right, that's when I start getting nervous and seeing whether these asymmetries will actually result to the stuff that goes up on top. Because remember, our hips and our torso is the cement or the foundation in which our shoulders work on, okay? So most importantly, obviously, is our hips, because our torso sits on top of our hips and our shoulders sit on top of our torso or connected to our torso. So these all need to be worked together. If we have common asymmetries in all three of these, that's a big red flag for me. These are where I really want to start working on these corrective exercises. When we come down here and we talk about the functional exercises, I use these because they're fun and there's something to work with. However, I don't necessarily care about them as much as these individuals. Why? Because they go past so much of a broad spectrum. For instance, kettlebells overhead squat, it's a simpler exercise than the Turkish get-up. However, they cross so much planes, and they're a whole body functional exercise that it's tough to get specific information out of them. However, they're good to give us overall functional symmetry. So we use them. However, we care a lot more about these individualized structures, okay? So what I want you guys to do is go home, check out your notes, write these all down, get your dominance patterns that you might have had, put them in a flowchart that looks similar to this, okay? And we can really start to look at the map of our body. And then we can program corrective strategies for them. Guys, I hope this helps you out. Until tomorrow, we are optimizing function to optimize performance.